Right. Hello, and welcome to the panel for the UK Sexuality Conference on ACEs over 40. I hope you all slept well. It's a fine day here in Glasgow, and I hope the weather's good with you. This is going to be just a discussion about older asexuals, and I have a couple of people who've been kind enough to join me on this panel today. So would Maria and Mark like to just introduce themselves for a quick few minutes?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Maria. My pronouns are she, her. I'm from Spain. I'm 45 years old, and just I'm asexual since I don't know the early 2000, and I just recently started a blog and doing some more advocacy work here in Spain, just because I realized there wasn't that many middle-aged ace people out there.
Okay, thank you, Maria. Mark, do you want to go next?
So, hello, yes, my name is Mark. I am 58. I live and work in Reading. I am a homoromantic asexual, and is starting out. I always thought I was different, but back in the sort of the 70s and very early 80s, this is when sort of homophobia and racism were acceptable. So I just sort of kept my head down.
Mm-hmm.
And sometime later, it got to, I realized that I was attracted to men, not sexually attracted, but romantically and aesthetically attracted to them. So I thought perhaps maybe I'm gay. So I socialized on the gay scene for most of the 90s. That essentially confirmed what I inherently already knew. So, if anybody were to say, well, how do you know until you've tried? Well, I've been in situations where the next step would be what you can imagine. So, but that never happened. So it was about that time I started to use the term asexual to describe myself. And I theorized that there must be other people like me out there, but thought that the chance of knowingly meeting another one must be pretty vanishingly small. And then it was 14th of October 2004 when on the front page of the Guardian newspaper there was an article about asexual people, not celibate people. I went, yes, I was right. So it was an epiphany for me. I thought, I'm not the only one. There are other people like me out there. And there was a number of articles about it which were inspired by that month's New Scientist featuring David J. And that sort of led on to joining AVEN, Asexual Visibility and Education Network. Joined that in 2004. And I first met other ace people January of 2005, which is like another epiphany, actually meeting other people like me. And because of that sort of epiphany of discovering there are other people like me, I got involved with visibility activities. So sort of right up to TV appearances, radio appearances being contributed to local paper and national newspaper articles, magazine articles, and that kind of thing, and then participating in conferences, so like this. So
Excellent. I'm sure we'll discuss more about you mentioned homophobia there, but I'm sure we'll discuss about the issues that we had when we were younger, because obviously society is a lot different now than it was when we were growing up. So, yeah, people have a lot more. Well, I'm not going to say they have more freedom. Well, I suppose they have more freedom of expression to be themselves. Although obviously there's still a lot of homophobia and transphobia out there, and that feeds into the asexual sphere. It's interesting that you mentioned the Guardian, Mark, because the first time I came across the word asexuality was a few years later. I think it was 2011, and that was the first time I'd come across the word asexuality. But I'd been thinking about that kind of idea for a while because I'd been in relationships. I'd been married. Well, I'd been engaged 3 times, but it hadn't quite worked out for reasons. And I just thought I was bad at heterosexuality. I just thought I was just not a very good man. But lo and behold, asexuality turned up, and I went, oh, that works. And this leads quite nicely onto our first question. which was quite popular on the Slido. It was, what was your journey of discovering that you're asexual like? So how did you discover you were asexual? What did that feel when you were discovering it? We'll go to Maria first, I think, because I mean Mark's kind of popped it, mentioned a bit about that already. So let's go to Maria first.
Yeah, sure. So the first time I knew something was wrong with me or different with me from other people was in 1992 when the hit Basic Instinct came out to the cinemas. Up until that point, I always thought my friends, my partner at the time, everyone I knew, they were just exaggerating when they were saying someone is hot, I really want to, have sex with them. I was like, no, you really don't want that. It's just, you have to say it because that's what movies and TV series are saying. So that's why you're saying that, but you really don't want to have sex with them because you don't know them. Yeah, they're beautiful, but you know who they are. So we went to the cinema to see this movie, and I remember distinctly when we got out, like everyone was really, really excited about the movie. Like it was great. It's all I ever wanted in a movie, and I was like, that wasn't that good of a movie. Like it was the mystery and the thriller. Yeah, it was good, but it wasn't that good. I mean, Hitchcock is way better than this, and they were like, no, you missed the point entirely. And I was like, yeah, maybe I did. So can you please explain that point to me? And I realized they were really, really excited in a physical way. And I was like, that didn't do anything to me. Like, it was okay. Yeah, I didn't even see that famous scene with Sharon Stone. Like, I didn't got that. So that's when I started thinking, well, maybe I'm different. I don't know why I'm different. I've been different all my life for a lot of reasons. This is just one more. But it was 1992, so internet was even in our lives. I have no way to knowing what was going on. So I went on pretending I was bisexual, but yeah, with a lower sex drive. And it wasn't until, I would say, 1996, I got internet at my home. Here in Spain, we were late bloomers in that sense too. So, and it was Netscape, and you could actually look for things. It wasn't like Google, so don't get me wrong. It was fairly difficult to find things, but you could actually see a couple of things. But yeah, I always thought asexuality was amoeba things. So it's a starfish and all those kind of things. I was like, yeah, that kind of resounds, but they are starfish and I'm a human being, so it can be. And I kind of stopped thinking about it. It was like, okay, you just don't have the sex drive that everyone has. That's it. So psychologists say, yeah, well, that's a phase, we all hear that. And yeah, then in 2004, I had a boyfriend, a serious boyfriend. We were together for 3 years. That was a complete disaster. And when we broke up, I started actually researching what was going on. Like, this is not working, and I really need to understand why. So it was 2007. I came across a event page. So, and then I started like, that kind of makes sense to me. Yeah, I might be this, but it wasn't until like 3-4 years after that I actually started to came out with my friends, saying, yeah, I am biromantic asexual. I know my labels now. I know who I am, and this is who I am. And I'm offering it to you so you can actually treat me like an asexual people and stop telling me, why don't you find this person hot? Because I'm not going to find it hot ever. Like, it's not going to happen. So stop doing that. So yeah, I recently I identify as gray sexual because I had to do a lot of think about my personal experience. And I realized I actually experienced sexual attraction 3 times in my life, which is not a lot, but well, it's 3 times. So it was like, yeah, kind of, I know why, I know where the reasons were. So now I define as great sexual and a bit romantic.
One of the things that springs to mind when you were saying that is, how did you even know what to look for? Because obviously, I mean, these days, lots of sexual and gender orientation, the words, they're already there. They're already in society. You can easily find them. You can see them even in passing if you're on a social media site. But back in those days, the word, I mean, as I say, I only came across the word in 2011. So how did you know what to look for?
I went into IRC chat rooms. They were about sex and people talking about sex. And because you were behind a screen name, you could ask the questions you couldn't ask to your friends. And I was like, hi, is there anyone here that doesn't want to have sex like ever? And a couple people were like, yeah, that's me. I really don't have that. I don't know what it is. So that was like the rabbit hole I went into. So not that much Netscape, but the ERC chat rooms where you can find different people. Like they were like, yeah, you're not alone. We're not that many, but you're not alone. And I'm like, thank you.
And these days, I mean, IRC is kind of now replaced by Discord, and there's a lot of Discord asexuality servers out there. You got anything to add, Mark, to that?
Well, so my journey was sort of somewhat longer. Sort of, you know, from childhood, sort of knowing, you know, realizing I was different, and then, you know, as Maria said, you know, all these other people are sort of getting, you know, talking about being attracted to other people. And I thought, well, I don't really experience that, but that was a time when if you stick your head up, you're gonna, you know, you attract attention or get bullied. So I was very good at keeping my head down and avoiding those sorts of conversations like, who do you fancy, and all the rest of it. I just became very good, very evasive. But saying about technology as well, another thing is awareness. So, you know, late 70s, early 80s, the internet didn't exist. So, you know, that information wasn't out there. So, you know, you could there's information about gay people. You can have sort of gay bars and things like that, but nothing. You know, it was much harder to find any kind of information. So, and you know, we didn't need, you know, and also mobile phones hadn't been invented then. You know, or you know, in the 80s they were just portable telephones. You couldn't access the internet on them. So that's some of the problems with older people, is that now, you know, you feel a bit curious. There's so much information out there. You know, it's really easy to find things, but back then it was a lot harder. So what I did is just kept my head down, and I'm sort of fairly analytical. I just got on with things and sort of, you know, did other things. So I just got very, very good at evading these those sorts of situations where you sort of reveal that no, I don't experience sexual attraction and that sort of thing. But then fast forward, I mean, it's fairly recently now. There's another one of the a sort of works outing, you know, sort of group of mates in a meal out, you know, and that they had that conversation. Well, who do you fancy and all this sort of stuff? And I could quite happily say, well, I don't fancy anybody because I'm asexual, you know. So, well. You know, who would you like to get together with, sort of thing? Well, you know, I say, well, there are people I like the look of, and that would be this. But I had full confidence to be able to do that now that I'm, you know, fully confident of what I am. But you know, it's taken a long time, a long gradual process of finding out and sort of, you know, coming to terms with what I am, what I can do, and what I can't do. Up to the point where I had the epiphany of discovering there are actually other people like me out there, which, you know, it's 2004.
Yeah.
And then similarly, knowingly meeting other asexual people, which was absolutely fantastic. And there's this whole community of people out there, but that not possible without the internet. It's the internet that's enabled that information to be out there, because the number of asexual people, and the figure I've most often seen is about 1%. So it's not enough. And also we don't have a hormonally driven urge, as it were, to find other people like ourselves. Whereas, you have sort of gay bars, there's proportionally more of them. I think the government figure is 7 or 8%. I think the most common figure I've seen is about 10%. So there's enough people and they have that urge to find each other. But obviously with ace people, there's not enough. There's not enough critical mass to get ace cafes or serving the famous cake and coffee and all that. So,
yeah. I mean, one of the things that I travel the world. I blog and podcast under the name of Barefoot Backpacker. So I go around the world, and I go around the world mostly on my own as a solo traveler. But one of the things that I've kind of mused about is that there's a whole industry out there for gay travel and lesbian travel. There's plenty of bloggers and plenty of podcasters and writers who are writing that content. There isn't for asexual travelers. And one of the things that I mused about was that the difference between an asexual traveler and a solo traveler is almost none, in a sense, because you're not traveling with a partner necessarily. You're not going to, as you say, gay bars. So the content that you have, when I'm walking down the street in some country like, I don't know, Uzbekistan, no one knows that I'm asexual. And so there's no kind of differentiation. There's no kind of, I don't really know how to describe it. It's like representation almost. It's like, no one knows that I'm asexual. I'm not going to say no one cares, but it's not distinctive enough. And we're not easily found. And we hide. Not necessarily even intentionally, but we just hide because what we want just often doesn't involve other people in that romantic or sexual context, which means that we're unlikely to, be traveling the world with them or anything like that. One of the questions that came up, and we're kind of into it already, is how we think the internet has changed the way that aces can connect and whether it's made it easier to find information. And I remember where I work, we had an older gay man come in to talk about the history. It was during LGBT History Month. And he was talking about back in the 70s, and you might relate to this a bit, Mark, 70s and early 80s. Gay men they had a list of phone numbers, and these, like, to arrange a meeting, they would just phone a friend and go, there's going to be a meeting at this bar in 2 days' time. Tell people, and they would phone their friends, and that was the way that information was disseminated. But for asexuals, I don't think there's enough of us to have even done that. So, I mean, for me, certainly the internet's changed the way that I've connected because I've managed to find other races. We are here in this conference, so that would have been very difficult without the internet because there just would have been so few of us, and we wouldn't have known anyone else. I don't know how you both feel about that.
I agree completely. Like, I was only able to label myself and understand myself because of internet and the resources that were out there. So, and I had like 20 years of not knowing who I was. More like 30 years of not knowing who I was. That is huge. Now people came out and they start questioning their sexuality and their gender, and they have lots of information out there. And you won't get your label sort of into one side, but you will have all the information you need to do it in the time you need to do it. Like, we were just like trying to scrap bits and bits of information, and that was a huge deal. The first asexual people I knew were in the AFM forums. So that's when I realized, hey, there's more people out there. They were really supportive of my journey. So it was really good, but it was the first time. And up until now, even though I constantly go to LGBTIQ plus spaces, I don't have many aces.
Yeah.
Like, it's really, really difficult. So I think internet changed everything for us in a good way.
Yeah. You got anything to add to that, Mark?
Well, I mean, I think it's been said already. I mean, as you self said initially, there's not enough of us for a critical mass to have that, and also we don't have that hormonally driven urge to find each other, which sort of sexual people have. And the internet has revolutionized it. It's pretty much made it possible. First of all, to find out information, and also groups of people can then create sites like Avon itself, where ace people can talk to each other. So it's revolutionized it. It's pretty much enabled them to connect. Whereas before, it's like, as I thought, there must be other people like me out there, but how do to my knowledge, I'd never knowingly met one. How would I know that? Because another point you made about sort of traveling is that because I socialise in the gay scene, I have a gaydar, so usually I can suss gay people fairly quickly. The subtle things, the way they move, the way they dress, and the way they speak, their gestures and such like that. And I thought, well, a number, I've been on quite a few meets and met quite a few ace people, ace conferences, and everything else, and there is no. I certainly haven't developed an ace star, because I thought, well, perhaps, say in the case of women, women, I thought, well, ace women might sort of choose their clothing on the basis of like it's more on comfort rather than anything else. But no, they ace women sort of take a lot of pride in their appearances, and there is no sort of, it doesn't work, so seeing sort of actually recognizing another ace person, you can't, it's like the very straight acting sort of gay man as a sort of term, it's the industry. It's like flying under the radar. You don't invite sort of, it's much more subtle things like, don't have a partner or whatever, live on your own and such like. So, but yeah, so internet, I mean, it's revolutionized it. It's nothing short of that.
Yeah, cool. So the thing about obviously the internet is one of the other things that it brings up is online dating, and there are some asexual dating sites out there. But one of the questions that's been brought up is related to that. It's what's been your past experiences with relationships, sort of romantic relationships, sexual, platonic relationships even, and how has age played a role in that? So how has you as an asexual, have you developed those relationships? How have you handled those relationships, especially with people that aren't asexual? Do you want to, let's carry on with Mark if you want to contribute.
So with the only experience of, relationships, if you can call them that, was when I was socializing the gay scene through most of the 90s. There were a couple of people that approached me, and but and obviously it's kind of the wrong place to go for that sort of thing, but it was part of the experimental phase where I thought, well, perhaps if I'm in that right intimate sort of situation, something will happen and it'll click into place or whatever, which I sort of inherently knew that, no, it's not, I knew that inherently, but I thought, well, give it a try, see what happens. And, because, there's no manual on this sort of thing. You just have to try it out or go on your instincts. But these relationships are usually, they were very short-lived. Once the other person found out there's no sex in the offing, they lost interest fast. So, at that point I thought, it's not worth trying to have a relationship with a sexual person, because there's something that they want or desire which I can't provide. So that's not going to make for a long-lasting relationship. So I kind of gave up on the idea. I'm open to the possibility, but I think it's a bit of a target poor environment. First of all, you've got asexual people. Let's say the most frequent figure I've come across is like 1%. So and then the subset of those that the people that I would find attractive, homoromantic ace guys. So it's a sort of limited sort of subset, and then those persons would have to find me attractive. And I think, yeah, what else has life got to offer, sort of thing. So I'm sort of, yeah. So I'm open to the possibility, but I don't have very high expectations of that. But say as to the age, that it was at the time, it was more or less sort of contemporary age, with the sort of people that took an interest. So, but yeah, so
yeah,
yeah, so I've not had, so that's no relationships since then. I mean, lots and lots of friendships. I have no problem at all making friendships. I have some very, very good friendships with people, and sort of long-term friendships. I mean, there's one person that I've known since school, and we're still sort of firm friends, and he has a fiance and all of it. So, that's not a problem. But romantic relationships, no, I've not experienced long-term one of those. So.
Yeah, I mean, as I say, I've been engaged 3 times and it's not worked out. But what's interesting for me is that all those relationships, they've not sort of started with a bang and ended with a bang, as it were. They've kind of faded in and faded out. I've tended to be friends first and then stayed friends afterwards. So, like one of my last relationships, how some people, have a date, almost a time when they know their relationship ended. My last relationship, I'm not actually sure I know what year it ended in, because because I'm not sexually focused and they were, we kind of just drifted out of that side of things. So we stayed friends, but we just drifted away from being romantic partners and ended up just being platonic partners, and that tends to happen with me a lot. And the other thing is as well, growing up, I tended to have a lot of pen pals, and those pen pals tended to be female. And I was very close to quite a few of them, and I'm still very close to a few of my female friends, but there was never any suggestion on either side that it would be more than that. So they never saw me as a threat, and I never saw them as a partner. So I'm wondering if, like you said earlier about not having an ACE-DAR mark, and I'm just wondering if there is something that it does exist, but maybe it's a little bit more subtle. It's weird. Is there anything you want to say, Maria, on this?
Yeah. Well, as I said, I went through life pretending I was bisexual. So that means I had a lot of relationships that ended really, really bad because, well, when someone is allosexual and the other one is asexual and she doesn't know it, it's going to be a problem. Like that's a recipe for disaster for sure. So as you can imagine, I did have a lot of relationships. I did have them with people my own age, older people, younger people, trying to find the balance in there. It wasn't because the problem wasn't the age, it was something else. I have to say the most successful relationship I had was with a guy, and he lived 600 kilometers away from my house, which helped a lot because you don't have the expectation of doing something you really don't want to do every other day. It's just once a month. So yeah, I can live with that. Again, that didn't work either, but it was the most successful relationship I had in that sense, in the sense that I wasn't feeling bad with what I was doing and how I was behaving, and feeling every time that I saw them like there's something wrong with me and I don't get to know what it is. And now at the moment, I don't have a relationship. I gave up on relationship like 5 years ago, something like that, because I realized, as Mark said, it's going to be a huge strike of luck to find someone compatible with me. Like, they will have to be, yeah, we could go with gray sexual or demisexual, but allosexual probably won't work. I will need to like them and they will need to like me back, which is kind of weird. So I decided, okay, I'm not going to have this. I just removed myself. I last year I was like, I'm going to give it a try again because I'm biromantic and I really want someone to cuddle with. So I went into one of those dating apps that says, we cater for all sexualities. Let me tell you, it's not true. I did say it, I'm asexual. I'm only interested in asexual people. They pair me with everyone in the world, and no one of them were asexual. So what I endured was 2 months of answering every single question there is about our sexuality on a dating app, and I was like, I'm not doing this. Sorry, I'm out. So, but what I realized is I have 2 dear friends. They are a couple. Well, they are more than a couple. They live together. They've been together for 8 years, and I kind of move into that. So now we're like this weird matrimony of 3, where they have sex, which is great. They love it. I don't, which is great. I don't need it. We don't have sex with each other, but we do things that you will do with your couple. Like I will go with him to football games because we love football. I will go with her to club book reading, so museums and all that stuff because we love to do that, and they can do it with each other. So I'm like the moving wheel, and they're like, yeah, this kind of works, and we love each other dearly. So now like, I guess in a platonic relationship with a guy and a girl, and it's working great. And I think age played a really great role in me maturing into that, moving into what is expected of me to what I really, really want and what I'm really, really comfortable with. And I know they have my back, and every time we go, they treat us like, if I go with her to all UTB spaces, they will treat us as we are lesbian, which is okay. We will cuddle and we will maybe even kiss. And then if I go with him, we're treated as heterosexual. So I'm bisexual. So, but everyone seems to be like, yeah, this is a couple of 3, so it works. And if it works for them, yeah.
I mean, one of my relationships in the past was with a woman who lived in the USA, so just over 3,000 miles away, and who defines herself as pansexual and polyromantic. And that worked absolutely brilliantly because it meant that me and her could have the platonic relationships at a distance, and then she could do all the sexual things she needed with her friends and her lovers, and it worked brilliantly. And then we faded out into friendship anyway. But I have quite a few platonic friends, and I will do things like dating with them. But it's not dating. But I think if you were looking at it from outside, it would just look like, a man and a woman going into a pub having a nice romantic meal. We know it's not, but from the outside, it looks like it is.
It looks like.
Yeah. And that leads into the next question I have, which is about whether we feel discriminated against or misunderstood by other aces, and I suppose by inference allos, because of our age, and whether also, when we were growing up, obviously we had limited ace representation, and does that feed into the way that certainly people our age who aren't ace, as well as other aces, might well view us negatively because they wouldn't have the representation that younger people now have?
So I'll go first.
Yeah. Okay.
The short answer is yes. I've been discriminated against because of my age, which is something I can understand due to the moment it was. So as I said, I started figuring out at 2007. I was 30 years old, and I came across AVEN and the forums, and I went there, and there were a couple of people that were really nice, and I tried to do more than just being on the forum. So being part of AVEN here in Spain and doing more things and being part of those communities. And I realized over the time that they weren't saying no directly. They were just like not answering me or ghosting me. And I realized I'm 35 years old at the moment. They are 20. That makes sense. Like, they wouldn't want someone that almost doubled them in age hanging out with them. And I really, really understand it. If it will be the other way around, I will probably do the same thing. Like, why am I going to have a 35 person coming here to have drinks with us? We don't have anything to talk about with her. So I completely understand it was not bad blood in there. I was like, okay, this is your space. I respect that. I'm just going to stick around and do other things and try to find older races, which is not that easy, to be honest. And that's why this year I started with the blog and coming out on Twitter last year, like, hey, I'm 45 years old now. I'm here. I'm queer. Deal with it. And I'm going to, explain it to other people who are over 40 or are coming into the 40s so they can understand we are here. But that only happened, and I have to be really honest about it, on ACES spaces. It didn't happen on LGBTQ+ spaces. They don't see me as a threat because I have 10, 15, 20 years more than them. They're like, okay, you're one of those older guys that can tell us everything and how things were before the internet. I'm like, yeah, well, I can tell you something. But yeah, so it only happened there. But again, no bad word. I completely understand it.
Okay. Mark, you want to add something?
Yeah, I think that's what Maria's saying. I mean, that's sort of very true. I think it's also that, there's a natural sort of, like, same with people hanging out with each other, interacting with each other. There's an age band, and you go too far beyond that, and people don't generally sort of, have the sort of same interests and all the rest of it. But I found that if you've got some sort of common interest, for instance, I love video games, so I can relate to sort of younger people because we can sort of talk about that sort of thing. Whereas I'm not just interested into old guy stuff. In fact, I don't behave like an old guy, so I can find it easier sort of, socializing with sort of younger people. There isn't a problem because I don't, I don't act like a traditional sort of old guy. I'm just not like that at all. So, but I thought what Maria was saying was very interesting because I'm not that sort of active on social medias or even on Avon. I should sort of pay more attention to it, I think. But it was interesting to see the LGBT spaces and the ACE spaces, and sort of finding that they weren't, ACEs were less interested in interacting with older people. So that's not something I've been aware of. So saying like the discrimination, I've not experienced that. But
okay. I just want to ask a very quick thing about ACE representation growing up, and whether that has affected the way you feel. Because obviously these days there's a lot more ACE representation in the media, but when we were growing up, we didn't really have any. Any thoughts on that?
Well, it's particularly noticeable for me because it was like the 1970s, early 80s, and all through that time there was, I didn't see any representation or overt representation in the media until 2004. So that's how, and this was, admittedly it's on the front page of a newspaper, but I might have been able to find something perhaps if I'd been actively searching, but I was just had that situation, right, well, I'm asexual, sort of, right, let's just get on with it, and sort of, so there hasn't been. But then I've also sort of come to terms with what I am and everything else, and fully accepting, this not sort of me sort of blaming anybody else for that. So, well, I've just, so it was just an epiphany when I found out. But it's been a long time, and I thought, how things would have been very different if I'd have been able to find out, as a teenager, had access to that information, and then that period of time from, sort of being a teenager up until literally when I was 40, before I actually found out there were other people like me out there, how different things might have been. So I had that whole length of from initially thinking I was just broken and sort of keeping my head down and sort of certain aspects not being able to sort of fit into certain things, it would have been nice. But then, that's just, but the other side as well is it's really nice to see how things have changed in my lifetime, how access to information, and I'd like to think I've contributed a little bit to that by doing visibility stuff, because I know what it felt like to discover that there were other people like me out there. And there was some interesting feedback from, because I was on Saturday Live on Radio 4, which traditionally sort of generally older audience would listen to that, and there were a number there where it's sort of effectively, wow, that's me. It's like, I always thought all this time I thought I was broken. So it's other people in the same situation. They've not, that perhaps they've not actively searched, or perhaps not thought of actively searched. They just come to terms with it and just go on with their lives as they were. And then suddenly they hear about other people like them. So.
Okay, cool. Anything to add, Maria? We've got about 10 minutes left. I've got 2 questions left, but if you've got anything to add?
Just really brief. I think the first ace representation I can recall on bigger media was the infamous House MD chapter with a asexual couple, which wasn't good, and I was coming out with, it was a whole mess altogether. So that's the first thing of the first people I saw, like, hey, they're saying they are asexual. But I do remember growing up, I loved Little Woman, but Rick Scott. Every one of my friends, they were like, Jo March is the absolute best there is. And I was like, yeah, up to a point when she falls in love. That's when I lose my interest with her. So I'm going to go with Beth, who is the only one that cares about, her family, her cats, her house, her friends, her sisters. That's me. That's what I want to be. So that was definitely the first ace representation. It's not right. Well, she might be ace. We wouldn't know either way. But that's the only beat I had when I was growing up. Like, yeah, that's me. She doesn't care about all this stuff you're caring about. So, yeah.
And that's why we do what we do. I mean, in 40 years' time, this conversation will not be taking place, because 40-year-old aces will have plenty of representation and everyone will know what asexuality is. But right now we're going through that transition period. Right, so there's one more big question to come. It's related, actually. It's in terms of, lifestyle choices, because obviously we're all older aces here and we've done the things that most people do in society. How do you find it navigating those types of milestones that people have that generally seem to be built for couples, like sort of buying a house, or, all of the talk about, settling down, getting married? And how do you do it on like a single income rather than on a dual income? I mean, for instance, for me, I've had situations where I've shared a house before, even though I'm, in mid-40s, because it's just cheaper for me to do that than it is to live alone.
Well, that's a very good question, because when I was in a position, I was stuck in rented accommodation for about 10 years, and then I managed to sort of save enough money. It come to be evicted from the sort of last rented place, and then thought, let's look into buying something. And essentially, the place I'm still in now is, was it's like a 1-bedroom mews house, so it's the same price as 1-bedroom flats at the time. So I managed to buy that. But the interesting thing was that there is discrimination, as it were, against single people, because I had an endowment mortgage. Now, if with a couple, they would only need between them to have one endowment that would cover the mortgage. But if you have 2 people, say the same gender, or 2 say separate professional people that decide to pool their resources and buy a house and share it, they each had to have an endowment that would cover the cost of the mortgage. And I think, well, you've got two professional people who are likely to have incomes and everything else versus, say, a couple where the kind of societal expectation is that sort of perhaps they're going to start a family, in which case one of them, if they weren't, or, you know, assuming they were already, is going to stop working, and then they've got extra expenses. And I thought, yeah, but you've got two professional people. Okay, they might argue that with professional people, they're more likely one is going to, say, sort of move away, or they're less likely to stay together. But it seems very unfair that, you know, but then there'd be a way of transferring the sort of payments or whatever, you know, that they'd be around that. But that's what I found. And also at the time I had to sign a private declaration that effectively saying, you know, are you heterosexual or are you homosexual? And I thought, well, I'm going to have to lie, because I can't put homosexual because I'm not homosexual. And I can't put heterosexual because I'm not heterosexual. But I thought, well, if I put homosexual, they'll think, oh, that person's going to get AIDS. So either A, they don't get the endowment stroke life insurance or whatever, or the cost would be absolutely prohibitive. So I just put heterosexual. So yes, so there are problems. You have to find workarounds, but it's, you know, is like the situation now, you know, you know, I have a work colleague that, you know, is getting quite frustrated by the ridiculous cost of property and how you can do that on a single salary. It always seems to be couples that can, you know, get a significant advantage. And, you know, another thing is that at least I get single person's allowance on council tax, which is like 25%, but shouldn't that be 50%? I use half the resources of a couple, so why isn't it 50%? You know, it's, you know, you just have to cope with these things, and some of them are, you know, yeah, I mean, they're sort of unjust. There's not a lot we can do about it. We just have to find workarounds. So
yeah, I mean, when I was looking for flats to rent in Glasgow, I was moving up here with a friend of mine, and there were a couple of places where we were passed over and the landlord chose someone else because they chose someone in a couple rather than two friends, because they felt that two friends were less stable as a I'm going to say relationship, although relationship is probably the wrong word, rather than a couple. And we're going, we both work, and, you know, divorces are more likely than friendships breaking up. But there we go. Maria, you got anything to say on this?
I was going to say I was really lucky, to be honest, buying a house. So I bought my house in 2006, I think, and the economic crisis in Spain hit it off on 2008. So just 2 years of relief. I had a really nice job. I was having a really nice salary. I also had friends working in banks that could actually give me a mortgage, knowing that I was going to pay for it. Like, trust me, I'm going to pay for it. So I was really, really, really lucky in that sense. All other milestones society put, I was probably not that lucky. I'm a woman, so from my 25 years old till almost 2 years ago, all my family was asking, when are you going to get married and when are you going to have a kid? And I was like, I don't want to go into that. Thank you so much for asking. It's not on your business. So that was, I was lucky with the house. I wasn't lucky with my insurance. So yeah, I guess 101. And then the other milestone I'm kind of dreading is when I'm old. Like, am I going to be able to live alone? Can I go to a residence? Can I don't know, move with my friends and be all together in a house with no stairs so no one breaks her hip? All those things. So that's the one I'm kind of dreading. So you can ask me in 20 years and I will tell you what are my plans for that.
I've heard of people who, when they get to retirement age, they sell the house and then just live on a cruise ship for the next 10 years. Because
that sounds good.
Yeah, absolutely. Right, we've got about 3 or 4 minutes left, so I've got one final question. We've touched on it earlier, but do you have any suggestions of how to find other aces over 40 for friendships or queer platonic relationships?
Don't go into dating apps for hours. Never. Not that. Sorry. Seriously.
I know there are asexual dating apps, but equally I know that all dating apps are kind of filled with lots of people that want the same kinds of things, even the asexual ones.
Yeah, and I know they're huge in the UK and the US. Let me tell you, Spain is not one of those countries. Mm-hmm. So we don't have that many. But I will say social media is a brilliant way to connect with people and know if they are same-minded, and you can go on having something. The Discord server, the Mature Aces, I joined 2 days ago because I didn't know it existed, but realized it is there. There's a lot of people over 25, and I'm going to make use of that. So yeah, I will say internet once again.
Yeah. Mark, any suggestions?
Yeah, Maria's absolutely right. I mean, it's down to the internet, but I think, as she says, avoid the over sort of dating sites. Find things like, say, on Avon the Meetup Mart, where you just meet up with other people with no sort of pressure or expectation. It's just an opportunity to meet people, and the more people you meet, then the higher chances are you're going to meet someone that you're going to strike up a good friendship with, that is compatible, and then if something were to go a bit further from there, then that's going to happen. But it's probably not trying to rush into things. Right, I'm going to go to this meet, to pull. It's just sort of take it steady and think. Well, find other people that say like use various the internet, social media, and that sort of thing to find other aces, and then sort of meet up with them. And the more meetups you go to. And these would be like group meetups rather than just inviting a one person, because obviously there's risks associated with that. But if it's a group of people meeting up, just go to lots of these meets, and then sooner or later, the more people you meet, the higher chances are that you're going to meet someone that you really get on with and strike up a really good friendship, and then perhaps it can go further. So.
Yeah,
I want to say just one little bit I forgot. If you have a bookstore, an LGBTQ plus bookstore near you, go there, go to everything they do. You will find aces there. If they are ace friendly, you will find aces there. They might not be over 40, but they might be over 40. Like I have my bookstore and I go to everything they do just because it's a great opportunity to meet other people.
Yeah, I live in Glasgow, and I recently discovered it's actually a trans bookstore, but it's LGBT everything, quite close to me. And I went there, and they got me in touch with a number of other groups. So now I go to a monthly non-binary meet and a monthly generic LGBT meet. And so while it's in the wider rainbow community, at some point, by sheer laws of probability, there's going to be at least one other race there. So, yeah, it all works. Right, I think that's about it. So thank you, Maria. Thank you, Mark, for this discussion.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problems. The conference is going on for the rest of the day. And I believe the next, what have we got coming up? We've got disability and medical discrimination on a YouTube panel, and Aspectrum Identities on a Discord chat starting in about 5 minutes. So have a little break, get yourself some cheese on toast, and join the next sessions. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching.
Thank you all. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Right, bye.